Glenn, welcome back, my friend. It's been a while, but it's always a pleasure to have you here.
It's always a pleasure to be with you. I always enjoy it. So, how
Yes,
you gonna
actually,
get
I
me in
want
trouble today?
no, how you're going to get me in trouble today. See, you have the faith on your hat there. I have actually the matching shirt. My girlfriend got it for me, so I don't know if she prepped me for this meeting with you, but
She prepped it. It was the Holy Spirit's divine intervention.
there you go. What's the word that the young girls like to use? Manifestation. That's what it is. They manifest it, right?
Manifestate. Oh, we're teaching on the Holy Spirit in our church right now, and we talk about manifestation.
Oh, really? How's that going?
It's going well because we don't actually manifest anything as Christians. It's all manifested the Holy Spirit. Once we tap into the power, that's when things happen. It doesn't happen
Ooh.
because we will it. We have no power without the Holy Spirit. But that's I'm gonna let those preachers talk about that. I'm not.
You're not there yet?
I'm just saying. There's no. I am familiar. I've seen the reels where it's like when you manifest good things, you don't manifest anything.
So what do they mean actually when they say that? When they say they're manifesting? What do you think?
It's an aspirational term. Like I wish
Oh,
and
okay.
I will, like it's wish. I wish it would happen. I aim for it to happen. I want it to happen. I manifest it. Manifested sounds more intellectual.
But I've always come across people who say that they're not, they would say that they're not religious, they're spiritual.
What does that mean?
Are you asking me what it means to me or what it means to them?
Both. I mean, when someone tells me that they're not religious, but I'm spiritual, I'm like, my question always goes to, well, what do you profess a faith in? And they say, well, I believe in the universe. I believe in the stars. I was like, oh, okay. That's
Astrology.
that's astrology, but
Yeah.
that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, do you subscribe yourself to a faith belief? Christianity, Islam, Judaism, something like that. I am a proponent for Christianity because I believe a faith in Jesus Christ is the best way, and I believe it's the only way to eternal salvation. But other people believe different.
Yeah, yeah. I think like religion to me is just like it's just many faces of a similar coin where you have people like a lot of the prophets I know in Islam, Muslims, and Christians, it's similar stories, just different names, right? I know some people maybe struggle with subscribing to one faith because they may not be getting the results that they want, but if they understood that
Hmm.
faith, they would realize that hey, it's not necessarily what you want; it is what is best for you.
It's what's best for you, and it's what's the best outcome for you. So, yeah, you're getting into the tenets of my book.
Yeah. Well, we've already started, so tell me about this book before we jump right into it, my friend.
It's the same book. So part one, part two, how to get great dating outcomes in a modern world. I started writing another book over the summer. I stopped because I said, why am I doing this to myself again? I wanted to take some time to just kind of reflect on the successes of the first two books and then just feel where I'm led to do another book. But for the audience that doesn't know, I'm an executive, I'm an author, I'm a content creator in that order. And I've spent the last 20 years working and developing inside sales, outside sales, and marketing programs. And I found that there were many commonalities between people in their relationship outcome as they had more professional success. The more successful they got, the worse their dating outcomes got. So I wanted to know why. And as I started figuring out the why, it was because people didn't know who they were, know what they want, know what they qualify for, or even with whom they qualify for, know what they wanted from them. So since they didn't know those four steps, they were going to be in a perpetual 25-year state of bad relationship outcomes.
It's like a mortgage of misery when you said the 25 years of
25 years, just 25, and it's not that far off. If someone is born between 1970 and 1981, they've been dating for over 20 years, if they're not married, or they've been married once or married twice. And so, and they failed once or failed twice. So they're in a perpetual state, and the book helps illuminate why they're in that state.
I had a conversation since I know the last time, if you remember when we met when you came to Canada, I was telling you about the
Mm-hmm.
circle of friends, right? That I'm not
Yes.
that
Mm-hmm.
friendly with these days. So I spoke to
Mm.
one of them offline and I asked him the simple question. I was like, some of these guys have been talking about getting married, having children for the last 10 years, and they still don't have it now. And I asked him the question. I was like, at what point or what year do you look in the mirror and say, you know what, I am the problem instead of everyone else is the problem? And he didn't
Never.
have an answer, never. And I told
The
him
the
that
answer is
you,
never. Yeah.
yeah, I told him like you're wasting your time because you're just you're being influenced by them because now you're putting off. I'm like, some of us are almost 40, some of us are in our 40s, some of us are in our mid 40s. And I tell you, Glenn, like if you were to look at some of them, you would think that they're straight out of high school.
Just the way they carry themselves. So they would identify themselves as a city boy or a boy still. And most women would even say that. The six when we talk about the six versions of men that are in the dating market at any given time.
Yeah, but they
Um,
would go to like a the church as well. So I'm always confused because I haven't been to the church in a while myself, but I know you go.
mhm.
How how are they helping to balance these men? Because I think that's the first step is to balance out the men and then eventually you can help balance out the women.
No, it's a problem. So if we want to talk about here in America, in the black church, there is no balance for men. Men get a men's day program and they have a men's ministry and men's choir. You see all the men in the parking lot ministry or working security. That's where the men are. And they don't want to be bothered. They don't want to be touched. They don't want to be, they don't, they're there to do their duty as their belief back to God through Jesus Christ. I am here to serve. I am here to be used. I'm going home. What we find is that the churches in the US that are successful with men don't break out their programs for men and women. They're the churches that are a part of ARC, non denominational churches. They're pretty much, I don't know if it's the right way to say it, they're looked at as tapping a husband and wife team, creating a total addressable market for lost souls in an area, and then helping them plant a church. And they get all the resources. If I had to liken it to my own experience, it would have been the days I had in QSR with McDonald's. You go find the right person to be in your trading area to sell and evangelize the brand. That is what I believe are the next 15 years. Those are the churches that are going to see the largest growth. And to get back to your point with where men are getting centered, they're not. Right now in America, we have men who are going to the internet, they're going on video games, they're going to the barbershop, they're going to the lounge, and they're talking to other men about the problems that they're dealing with. And the church has been pretty silent on that. The churches that are not are the ones where you're seeing not just mothers, single mothers and kids, not where you're seeing older couples, where you're seeing young men who are wanting to be husbands and be fathers come together and then help them live out their call according to Jesus Christ. But until men get in that mindset and get into the flow of the appropriate church for their specific season, they're going to continue to wander aimlessly and still look the way that they looked in high school to you.
Do you think that maybe some of them need to understand that they have to do some deep soul searching and maybe understand the dynamic of how to I don't want to say handle a woman, but to maybe work with one because as you point out, they're spending so much time in their own circle of friends who are speaking the same thing, complaining about the same thing, and they just don't
Mm-hmm.
know the outside world or the other side.
Well, the question is, why don't they feel like, to your language, can they not handle or be with a woman? They haven't been exposed to it. I mean, in our society right now, over the last 20 years, we've seen a 20-point increase in the number of single family led households by women. 80% in one population of children are born to single mothers, single, unwed. And of those children, they are going through their entire life from 0 to 24, never seeing their mother deal with a man positively. So then they come into the dating pool, which we have seen over the last 20 years, and women are looking for a certain type of man. If that woman was not raised with a father in a household, the idea of a man is what her mama said she didn't like about her dad, and then she goes to the market and starts saying, this is what men need to be. You don't know what a man needs to be. You've never been experienced, or you've never had the experience around a man. So when you grow up and you have the privilege to grow up in a house with a man and a woman, and you see a man leading, it is easier for you to not just lead her, it's easier for you to lead other men. Men are tribal. We organize ourselves within hierarchies everywhere we go. We do it on the playground, we do it in the locker room, we do it on the schoolyard. and in the hallways of school and high school. We do it in college through fraternities. We do it through job opportunities. We know who's the boss and who's not. And then we go and do it in the military. We do it in the medical field. We do it in our trade area. Men are very easy to lead when they know leadership. I believe that there's something that God put in men where they're able to identify leadership quickly, especially if they've been exposed to poor leadership. It's like, you're not a leader, you're a manager. You're not a leader, you're a figurehead, which are different things. But being around other men and being around a leader is a lot better for all of society and for men to get the best outcome that they're looking for. But the men that you're talking about, they got to do some soul searching. I'm a fan of therapy. They need to go to therapy. They got to figure these things out that I'm communicating with a professional, because it helps them work through their reactions and their responses to the world, and more specifically, their responses to women.
And I think that's why the church was so um strong when it came to, okay, we have the setup, right? It's God, it's the man, it's the woman, then it's children, right? Like the man wants to
Mm-hmm.
lead and provide, because to your point, men can healthy men can easily understand where they fit in for the optimal conditions and the best strategy going forward when it's 4, 5, 10 men in the group. Okay, this person's going to be good at this person's going to be good at that, this person's going to be good at leading, organizing, whatever. I think sometimes women struggle with that a little bit because they may view it differently than other men. And especially if they're looking for a man to that, and the man that they're picking up doesn't know what he's doing with himself, and he's what you'd call like a city boy and he's struggling, they're always getting the example of a man who isn't a leader. So when they go out and they see one that's a leader, they're kind of like, oh my God, like how do I act? How do I respond to that? Is that what you're saying as well?
Yeah, I'll back into it. So for the audience, we talk about that there's six type of men that are in the dating market. The seventh man we don't consider. That's a boy. It's a boy. You have a boy and you're listening to this right now or watching it, you know boys. They're emotionally immature. They don't take naps when they're supposed to. They don't eat their vegetables. They don't take their medicine. And they live their life through adolescence. So we say that the three type of men that qualify for a great relationship and a great dating outcome are modern men, traditional men, and high value men. High value men is what everyone believes that they are on the internet. They're not. The high value man is going to be less than 10% of any given population at any given time. And high value men only pair bond, marry, and procreate with high value women. So what women then, the largest pool of women are really going to be qualified for are going to be modern men or traditional men. The most of the men that the women that you're talking about are experiencing are, we draw the line, they're males. So a male looks like a man, talks like a man, sounds like a man, walks like a man, acts like a man, thinks like a man, but isn't a man. He does not have the ability to evaluate a marketplace, evaluate a need, get a skill, and fix that need for profit and provision for his family. Males are always looking for someone else to come along and help them or save them. That's why a lot of modern women and females get upset because they get engaged to, have children with males, and the male will never lead them, and they will never respect a male as a female and a modern woman. And then you have gals and you have gals, guys, and then you have city boys and city girls. The city boy is what these women are subscribing those toxic traits of unfaithfulness, promiscuity, deception, lies. But they have the three C's, which we call chemistry. We have conversation and comfort, where they feel comfortable around them. They give themselves to them typically because they look good and they have something physically that they want. But the city boy will never commit because the city boy is only about conquest and fulfilling those boyish adolescent needs. He has the money and the time now. And that's where you see some of your friends in your circle of friends who are, they're still in city boy stage or they're in male stage, and they're in their 40s now and they can't get out. They don't understand how to get out. And the reason they can't get out is because they will say the examples that I've received of manhood are here. I thought I was mentored by a high value man, but just because he was an athlete doesn't make him high value. He was a highly compensated city boy. We say the fame component eliminates men from high value status automatically. So if you are an athlete, an entertainer, a preacher, or a politician, your relationship outcome comes different because of your fame and notoriety. So you don't have to do certain things in order to get the relationship outcome, which is why women who date these men get a taste of a lifestyle, get a taste of the excitement, and then they're bored when they go with a modern man or a traditional man. Because modern men or traditional men got their money a longer way, a longer time period, building a high value skill, negotiating, working over a 20, 25-year period. He ain't got time to be spending money on trips and bags. He's got a 401k to invest in. He's got rental properties to buy. He's trying to open up another LLC. He's trying to make sure if he has kids that his kids' education is taken care of. But you, as a city girl, as a female, and then if you're reformed and at best modern, you're trying to get this man to come to your side and work for 50-50, and he ain't gonna do it.
So how can the church help in that situation? Because many of these people you described, they do have a religious um, background, or they would profess that they have some type of faith, but it seems that they've distanced themselves emotionally and religiously from the actual teachings of the religion.
Okay. I got into it was a video I posted earlier this year. Some people in Europe and India wanted to argue me. And I said, oh, you know what? I haven't had a good argument today. So let's go ahead and argue. I said, give me what is the first example in recorded history of a good relationship? They started talking about the Queen of England. They started talking about the Queen of Scotland, people who all got beheaded. They started talking about, oh, Cleopatra and the King of Brunei. And I'm like, time out. I go, the law first mentioned in any type of theology class says, God, if you go back to God's first mention of it, that was his original intent. The first marriage was between Adam and Eve. The marriage broke down when Eve was deceived by the snake. And then, after being deceived by the snake, they had to take a bite of the tree of life. And then they were expelled from the Garden of Eden. When they were expelled from the Garden of Eden, that's when Eve got her name. Her name up until that point was woman, taken out of man. So that was the first marriage. And then that's when the first, quote, children are recorded in the history that we believe as Christians. All right. So God's first intention for a woman to have a man as a husband is he has to be what I talk about with the four P's. He has to be a provider, he has to be a protector, he has to have profession, and he has to have priesthood. Adam had a job. Adam knew what his job was. He did it. Adam knew who he was. He had a personal relationship with God in the garden. He had friends that were animals, and those animals he didn't cohabitate with or do anything with. He waited until God brought this being to him that was taken out of him. That was in, we talk in theology, or souls are tied to bones from his rib. His rib is his place of protection that protects the most vital organs. And then when she came in, she got into her position and her natural, what is the market is saying and the internet saying is her feminine frame, and she did her job. She supported him and she was his suitable helper. That is God's original intent for it. The church doesn't teach that anymore. The church teaches, well, it's God has a plan for you. You get into a relationship with Jesus Christ, you get into the flow of worship, you start giving 10% and above in an offering, you start coming to serve on the weekends, you start coming to all of our conferences, you buy these books, you go to these programs and these events, and then God's gonna bless you. You've done no work. And Adam didn't do all of that other church stuff to get Eve. Eve didn't do all of that church stuff to be brought to Adam. But so the church really needs to get back to teaching what is God's plan and intent for marriages. I'm at the privilege of sitting under a leader right now. Nothing's off limits. In the pulpit, in men's meetings, and one-on-one sessions, we're having a conversation about it, and it's really designed to get men back into the frame of what God has commanded for them to be, which is the head of household by following God. Anytime any married man who's a Christian is dealing with something and struggling, first thing God says, are you following me and following my voice? Doesn't say what my kids are doing and acting up. Doesn't say what my wife is doing and if she's not being, quote, submissive or listening. God always gets you back in right relationship with him. And when you're in right relationship with him, God pivots. And then, just like at the fall of man in the Garden of Eden, he pivoted his way up. He started with the snake, he went to Eve, and then he dealt with Adam, and then they were all expelled. So that is God's intention for any marriage where anyone calls themselves a Christian, for how you're in right relationship with him. I have to be focused on God. When I don't pray, when I'm not fasting, when I'm not in my word, everybody feels it in the house. Everybody feels it in my job. And I have to check myself because the Holy Spirit comes and tells me, you're not in the word. I had something for you in the word today and you missed it. So I pause what I'm doing and go back to that, get myself back in right relationship. And guess what happens? All of the other things start falling back into place because now I'm filled with the Spirit. I'm in right relationship with God and I'm in a right focus. And then I go back. Church doesn't teach that. Church teaches what I just said: come, give, do, be, praise the Lord.
I struggled with that a bit actually, now that you mention it that way, because I was focused on my relationship with God. I remember a time where it seemed like nothing wrong could go wrong during
Yeah.
that time, right? And the world looked so much different. And then as I started progressing and got more relationships and different types of relationship,
Mm-hmm.
that has always been my focus. And I think that's probably why I've always been put in a position where the girls that have come to me have always had a sense of religion or a sense of duty, versus I hear some stories, especially recently, and it's like you're really going through that. It's like, what does a person think they're doing when they're doing these things to you? And then the person will come back and say they haven't thought about it, they're just doing. So sometimes it makes me wonder that maybe that they're just so totally lost and they don't have any sense of direction and they're just aimlessly doing things. Because when you have a sense of duty and religion, your path is very clear because your path is structured. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
walk it, you walk it. If you don't want to walk it, you don't want to walk it. But just like walking down the street, if you turn into that dark alley, there's a possibility bad things will happen.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stay within the light and you continue to walk straight, you're more likely to have a good outcome. So where for the men, because I always want to start with the men, where can the men humble themselves or learn to humble themselves and say, I need to get back my connection and realize some of this other stuff, running around, not managing my penis properly, doesn't really matter.
De-discipline. Yeah. So I think and I like your statement, and it's something that we've talked about and I agree with. We always start with the men. I know that most people don't like that. I talk about it in my books. I talked about it on my talks, but we start with the men because what I believe to be true based off of the data and then for the result, and then based off of what we hear on YouTube. These women are tired. They're exhausted. They're tired of being modern. They're tired of being boss babes, baddies, divas, which I highlighted in my book. They're waiting for men to literally come and retire them. Not just not. I mean, and most people are like, well, not all women. I don't want to be retired. You're saying that out of a communicated or experienced trauma. You would love to be like Big Mama and Big Daddy. Now, for the audience that's younger, you don't know Big Daddy. You want to know why you don't know Big Daddy? Because Big Daddy died in the late 80s, in the 90s. He married one woman. He had 11 kids with that same woman. He didn't have any kids outside of the street, regardless of what the internet will tell you. He was a tradesman or had a great career in the city. He worked at the same company for 40, 50 years, retired from that company, bought a house, and sent all of his kids either through the military or through college. That was the choice. And then when he retired, he had the freedom to do things like golf and travel and work on cars and spend time at the lodge and spend time with his buddies. Big Mama never had to work. If Big Mama worked, it was temporary because Big Mama knew her job was these 11 kids, this house, getting him on the train to go to Chicago at 5:45 every morning, getting the kids up, getting them out the door, getting lunch and dinner ready for the younger kids, getting dinner ready. And then when he came back, pick him up at the train station, bring him back, and then we go from there. Big Mama, when Big Daddy died, never remarried because why would she? She's not going to get a better outcome than that. And so when you came up, young people, and you're in your 20s to mid 30s, You never knew Big Daddy. We all remember Big Daddy because we were taught by Big Daddy, and Big Daddy gave us the blueprint of success. Now, the internet and the market will tell you that there were no men in any household at any given time, any time. That stopped at slavery for most Black people. That's not true. You had men in the household at 80% marital rates all the way up until 1968. And then it falls off a cliff. We now have households that are 30%. We have we have people who are married. We have our best group is 51% married, two-parent household. The rest of the groups are in the 30s. We have immigrants coming to the country who have better marital outcomes and better marital statistics than Americans. So you didn't know Big Daddy. So you thought Big Mama ran it all. And so Big Mama had a house. She died. She left the house to the oldest, and the oldest messed it up. She, as the young people said, she tricked it off. She lost it in a gambling debt. She lost it because she refinanced it when there was no. She didn't pay the taxes on it. And so the communicated trauma was everything bad happened can be pointed back to when Big Daddy left, when Big Daddy died. Everything started to fall off the cliff. I can look at both of my family, both sides of my family. There was a major difference in the tone and the intention around both sides of the family once JW passed and then when Clifton passed. And it was because, and both of my grandmothers, God rest Lily B's soul, Clarice is still kicking, but there was a shift. There was a tonal shift. And what they realized is I got to figure all this out. And if you were like my dad stepped up, I have an uncle who stepped up on both sides. So they had to step up and kind of be that matriarch. And unfortunately, we're talking about the women here. They haven't seen that. They don't know what a good relationship over a 40-year period looks like because 80% of us are coming into single parent households. And single parent households have a revolving door of partners that come in and out. And those partners come in and out and they leave and they do trauma to children. So if you're 33 right now and single and you came from a single parent or a broken household, I honestly feel bad for you. Humble yourself, get into a church. Ladies, find you a mentor. Brothers, find yourself a mentor who's where you want to be and do exactly what they say to do and don't do what they tell you not to do. It is the best. Mentorship is going to be the best way. I believe that you should probably find a mentor in the church. If you're a Christian, you should find you a mentor if you're at the mosque. If you are someone who's at the synagogue, find you a mentor. But really, those two communities do a really good job of mentorship. But that's a whole nother discussion. Make sure you find yourself a mentor who's where you are and where you want, and then you can start to get those better life outcomes.
I see a little bit of revisionist history now that you mentioned from when Big Daddy passed on. Growing up in it, because I remember growing up with my grandmother, and I remember that strongly. Now, all these years later, the way some people talk about that time period is no, he wasn't that great. He was abusive. He had all these children outside of wedlock, all these things. And then if you're old enough to remember living through it, even though you're probably young enough, let's say under 15, and you look back on it, you're like, that is totally not true. But what has happened, I think, is maybe the firstborn, the secondborn, they kind of got
Mm-hmm.
caught up, right? And they didn't debunk these things. And then when they had children, all they knew was their mother. They didn't know their grandparents because their grandparents are probably gone. But to your point, like our grandparents had a lot of children and then it started to decrease. But then you saw all these people starting having kids without the man. So they're thinking, no, it was never 80%. Like even when you go to them and you say, hey, if you go to like blackdemographics.com and you see that the
Mm-hmm.
most active parents in all of the household are black men, they don't even want to
No, it's
believe
not.
it.
They can't because that goes against the programming. The programming tells them that specifically black men are not involved as parents. And if you ask women outside of the black community who have children with black men, they're like, "Oh no, he's involved." It is less than it is less than we should pull up the data. But in multi-ethnic, multicultural homes where the black man is there, I believe the number is closer to 60, 68%. where it has been communicated that they are active participants in the child rearing, child care, which is different, and parenting. So what is being communicated is that Big Daddy, going back to your point to close that, he had a bunch of kids. Most of the Big Daddies that we know didn't have kids. You know, the ones who did have kids, their sons, Big Daddy sons. All his kids that were born in the 1950s and 1960s are the ones that started having a bunch of kids outside. And then it gets tied to Big Daddy, who only had one woman. And so Big Daddy's sitting here getting dumped on, and all he did was take care of his woman, take care of his kids, put a roof over their head, put food in their mouth, discipline them. Big Daddy did go to parent teacher conferences if he had to. He went to church. He was on the usher board. He was a deacon. He was a leader in the community. That is what I believe is missing. And then when you go back to the original point, that is what men want to see in the church. Men tie themselves to something that's bigger than themselves, and they need to see people who are actually living out the calling versus people who are talking about the calling, which really appeals more to women. Women like to feel good about what they're hearing. Men want to see the result and the action of what they're being told.
How can we reach the women in that regard since they want to feel what they're hearing?
I think that we have more than enough outlets for women for that. I think the reality is when men start, and this is going back to what the internet is against, because the internet will say, men say the women are the problem, the women are this, the women are all sexy red and glorilla, and I can't stand them. Okay. If that's the case, stop entertaining the glorillas and the sexy reds. I need you to stop. Well, get off Instagram. Is a term for the audience, and I know if anybody from my church watches this, stop liking booty models on Instagram, stop liking their pictures, and get off the app, go into the church, get involved in a group, and then watch your life get better. So when you start doing that as a man, you're not even going to look at the sexy red. She can't even come up in your purview because now you're looking for, if you spend any time in the word, most Christian men will say, I'm looking for a Proverbs 31 woman. And a Proverbs 31 woman is rare. She is a high value woman who's less than 7% of the market. How is it less than 7% of the market when high value men, are 10% of the market? Some high value men are staying single because high value women understand being attached and associated with a purpose. And the Proverbs 31 woman was married with children. She was a boss babe. She was a businesswoman. She got up early. She didn't stay in the bed all day looking at Instagram and doom scrolling. She got up, got out, took care of her household, took care of her kids, went to see her man because he's a leader. She had to go and see him at his office. You know, he didn't have to do all the drop offs and pickups and do everything you don't want to do. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like once you, I think for the ladies, what they're asking for is they want to see real men. The Bible to me gives more than enough examples of what true Christian manhood should be, and the church needs to start teaching that versus teaching the word that is good to the ear and keeps the seats filled and can clip on Instagram and TikTok. Start preaching the word of God to get lives changed, souls saved, so we can make better communities.
I think that's one criticism I've heard about the church in recent memory is that they spend too much time catering to a specific demographic instead of preaching the word. So two things that I heard is one, they preach too much to women in general, especially single women, and they're trying to fill it. And the second criticism I hear from them is that there seems to be a less of a focus, and you mentioned this, on the actual family unit and how you're going
Mm-hmm.
to conduct that. Would you say that's accurate?
I would say that's accurate. I would just tell you this: if you are a man, one of the things that all men kind of agree with who are parents, children's church better be open. Children's church better be open on Sunday, or I'm not serving, because the children's church is open. And mom is comfortable with children's church. The children will be comfortable, and mom will be comfortable. Until mom is comfortable, and this goes across all versions of women, this goes across all demographics. When mom is comfortable, you can go serve. That is why you see a lot of men who have children, who have young children. They're not at church on Sunday. There's nothing. There's no children's program. There's no children's ministry. There's no children's church. And I had the privilege of helping plant a great church back home in Indianapolis. One of the first meetings there was around 70 of us in the room, the original 70. Somebody raised their hand. What's the children's church situation going to be? Because the church we came from, children's church, was only open once a month. And it's just like, why am I coming here if I'm going to have to deal with a 4-year-old in the sanctuary? Mom doesn't want to deal with the child in the sanctuary. And then it falls on dad. Dad really don't want to deal with the kid in the sanctuary. Dad's like, come on, let's just go. Let's get out of here. We're not going to act right. Let's get out of here. And so I think if you're building a church, for anybody who's listening, make sure that your children's ministry and your child care ministry is on point. Invest there first. Second, when you start looking at the teaching, make sure the teaching is Bible centric. Don't give neocon, neoliberal, feminist talking points out of the pulpit. It turns off the men. Men can look at anything on TV and get all of those points. And here's the rub: most of the men in the church want their woman to be successful and to be happy. So you ain't got to worry about those points. So let that go. But if you start teaching the word of God where it's in spirit and in truth, you will start to allow the Holy Spirit to work, to reveal some things in people's lives, and then people will start to see a change. But when you spend time trying to get a word to someone that makes them give a little bit more this month, you never get to the root of God. And here's the rub about the churches we've talked about, the non-denominational, multi-ethnic, multicultural church. I've never been asked to give to a building fund. I've never been asked to give to pay for a water heater. I've never been asked to give to send somebody to college. You do it because the word is going forth and people are challenged through the Holy Spirit, and giving is at an all-time high. I'm gonna say this for the audience. Deliver me from another building fund, another capital campaign, another we need 333 in 33 days from every member for every week for the next 33 weeks. No, I'm over it. I'm not signing up for that type of ministry. And here's the rub: I don't want my family to experience that because I came from it. I remember doing it. So it's now time for us to get serious about the word of God so we can help this current generation of men, not the next, get them together so the next generation now has better examples and then start to see the results improve with all outcomes, including dating relationship.
Fantastic point. And that reminds me of in my 20s when I used to be very active in the church. I used to give talks and everything. I think I shared this the last time, and you know, I've spoke
Yeah.
offline. One thing that I will say, and this is for every single person out there. I'm not saying you have to be the next incarnation of Jesus Christ, but what one thing you got to take away from the church, because I took this away and I haven't been to it in quite some time, is that the foundation never leaves you when you fully accept it. You begin to understand the importance of
Mm-hmm.
being a better person because without you, you can't expect better from your woman. And I think a lot of men are missing that because they're having the mindset, from what I hear from a lot of women, is that, you know what? And I've heard this, Glenn, I am the table. People will say, women say that. I've started to hear men say that. I'm starting to hear men say that I'm not going to settle. So now we have two groups of people who don't really like each other, speaking the same language, using the same word, and they're having the same thoughts. And I'm really concerned that when you said that this current generation needs the help, they're around our age, Glenn. Some are a little
Mm-hmm.
bit younger, some are a little bit
Yeah.
older, but their state of mind is so many years behind that I'm afraid that by the time they realize it, will they have aged themselves out of the market?
Yes, they will have aged themselves out of the market. I believe that a couple of things. I am the table from a man or a woman is silly. No one's the table, no one's furniture. We talk about the table in our book series where we say that at a table, there are people have to bring something. So if you go to Thanksgiving, no one says, I am Thanksgiving. No. Thanksgiving is the environment, that's relationship. So at the table for Thanksgiving, any part of the world, any part of the modern world, let's just say, you got turkey and dressing or stuffing. You got, in some households, you got spaghetti, chitlins, green beans. You got mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie, sweet potato pie, cranberry sauce, and then you may have squash and then you may have potato salad or something like that. So there are all these different things that are brought to the table at Thanksgiving. I like to say that a relationship like Thanksgiving requires all of those things for everyone to enjoy the meal. So in it, you have to bring some reliability, some intellect or intelligence, some nurturing, some giving. Then you have to be wise, you have to be industrious, you have to be fearless, and you have to be elegant. Those are the things you bring into the relationship, and then you have a better Thanksgiving experience. If there's no turkey at Thanksgiving, does it feel like Thanksgiving? No. There's no pumpkin pie or sweet potato pie. It's not Thanksgiving. But when you bring everything together to the table, I think that you get a much better relationship outcome. And so we talk about that. That was chapter 2 and 3 of part 2. So that's easy. So now when we take a look at what you're saying about the language, I believe it's the programming. There has been a war that has been going on, and traditional media has pushed it to have women versus men, men versus women. And what we are now starting to see as of this recording in 2024, it's all over every media outlet. It's in every piece of content. It's on every station. It's in our churches. It's in our corporations. And no one can have Thanksgiving without each other. So men saying, I am the table, women saying, I am the table. Neither one of you are the table. Y'all don't understand anything if you come talking like that. I've actually jumped off a podcast where somebody was like, I said I'm the table, so I need to understand why you disagree. I was like, we can end it here. Because you're not even coming from a place of good faith where we can have a conversation about what we need to do. But I just really think people have to stop subscribing to the war on men versus women. There is no men versus women. Men and women need each other. It was like that in the beginning. It will be like that until the end of time, where we need one another, not just to procreate, but for relationship. So, I mean, life is very different for young men, in my opinion, who feel hopeless about a relationship outcome and attaching themselves to something bigger than themselves. What they end up doing is they end up becoming radicalized. What they end up doing is starting to believe, going down rabbit holes. And that's why I say on all of my videos, live or reacts, we believe that the best societal outcome, one man, one woman, long-term relationship, marriage, children, legacy as a result. Because when you're worried about those things, you're not worried about yourself. You're doing the work in secret to become the best version of yourself to serve those groups down the line and then ultimately leave a legacy. I believe Big Daddy had that mindset. I know his father had that mindset. And I know that my father had that mindset. So it's up to us to carry that mindset through actions and through life.
And I think to further that is we're gonna have some difficulty because when you mentioned the internet and you mentioned the men and you mentioned the women who are thinking that they are the table and there's this war on healthy relationships between the two, it's a very lucrative area. Like how many
Yeah.
times I know you do your live and reaction videos and you know that I do it. I have videos as well. How many times have you and I come across something, we've exchanged videos where the person will literally say this person the opposite sex is the problem by this. The opposite
Mm-hmm.
person is the problem, join this and learn how to be like me. And a lot of these people, what they do is that they give the appeal that they're high value men because a lot of men would want to do that, right? They look at the Leonardo DiCaprio's. I would love to only date
Mm-hmm.
women 25 or younger. As soon as she gets 25, she's gone. So you have a lot of men that are seeking answers in the wrong places. And to your point earlier, as they get older, they got a little bit more money and they got a little bit more time because they can drive around,
Mm-hmm.
they can spend the money. So now they're spending it
Mm-hmm.
on things that don't necessarily benefit them when the most benefit that you're going to get is free. All you have to do
Mm-hmm.
is go drive there, sit down, and listen. But I think the church has lost a lot of men because of what they cater to and what they mention, as you mentioned, preach from the pulpit. And I think the women are suffering in a lot of ways because I would still argue that a lot of their intentions are still good and they still, as you said, want to be retired,
Mm-hmm.
but they're probably being their ideology is being attacked the most because I've heard some women share that when they say they want to work from home or be a stay-at-home mother, they're
Mm,
shamed. Like
mm.
we've reached a point where we're shaming women who aren't promiscuous, who want to settle down, who want to be a stay-at-home mother. Have you seen these things as well?
Yes. So, like I said, I believe that there's also, so let's take the second war. The second war is healthy relationships. We're, I think there was a post, what is his name? Sheisa Zed, Drink the Coffee Pot. Really good content creator. Um, it was talking about the programming that's been going on since the 90s in music and how all the women who are talking about strong, independent, and get the bag and promoting a promiscuous lifestyle are going home to husbands.
I remember
So,
that. I do remember that. Yes, I
so,
remember that.
so when I looked at the video, I was like, okay, hold on, let me go check this out. Beyonce's married. Nicki Minaj is married. Had her baby after she got married. Cardi B, I think they broke up, but Cardi is married, and I think she wants Offset back. You looked at Sierra, who is the queen of independent goodies. She married Russell Wilson, a cornball, who any other woman on the internet, when he is before Russell Wilson making 240 million, corny. I don't want to deal with him, and he's short. So they're all going home to somebody. Michelle Obama speaking at the DNC. Everybody wanted her on the Democratic National ticket. She introduced her husband. She gave up her career at the law firm so he could go be a state senator, U.S. senator, and president. And then you have the nominee now for the president for the Democratic Party, who's the vice president of the United States. She's married to a man, the man who did a public profession of her, admitted his faults, and is supporting her 100% of the way. So you got all of these figures of boss babes and women who are actually living out what they're speaking against, which is commitment, which is marriage, which is long term legacy as the result. And so now you got a whole bunch of women who are buying programs, men who are buying programs, who are making investments in the wrong thing, thinking that by making an investment in their body and making an investment in their face, that they're going to get the outcome that they want. You got men who are opting out and becoming passport bros and going to a third world country to find a woman. And we're literally sitting at the greatest time to be alive as of today because we have more people, more opportunity, more access, more connection than ever before, but we're getting worse outcomes. So the only answer to that is the programming. There's counter programming that's going on, and it's even going on by people who are living the life that they're speaking against.
I do remember that, and I know I think there's like a heavy focus on Beyonce, but she had the whole single ladies and put a ring on it. I think she did those songs, as well as you had Cardi B, who
I
she was
don't cook,
talking
I don't
about.
clean.
There you go.
Let me show you
Yes,
how I got this ring. Then Offset
yes.
posted a video of her cooking and cleaning. And she was like, well, yeah, I cook for my man. In your music, you tell women don't do any of that. You tell them to do everything that's promiscuous to keep your man. And so then that raises another point, and we've talked about this at the church, where women who should be looking to be like the Proverbs 31 woman are looking to be like Meg the Stallion because Meg the Stallion is telling them you can get all you want if you do all of these things. And then they go do all of these things with a city boy or a male, and they're not getting the relationship outcome they want. Then they go try to do the thing with a modern man or a traditional man, or at worst, they get in contact with a high value man and they get rejected. And so then they start shaming those three higher, like, why are you rejecting me? I don't know. I've never known a man to deny. It's just like, it's because I need more than that. I can get that anywhere. I need this. I need this. And if your head and your heart are tied up into language that the city girls use and Meg the Stallion uses, you're never going to get the relationship outcome. You need to look less like Meg the Stallion and the City Girls and look more like Big Mama.
One of my exes fell into that trap that you just described. She started changing her hair color and she started going on all these dates. This was after we broke up, and then she reached out and she was trying to rekindle things, and I said no. And then she did what a lot of city girls do, right? They go straight to offering their body,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
when I told her no, she looked at me. She's like, well, on the phone, she's like, how can you reject me? You can't reject me.
Yes,
Men
I
don't
can.
reject women. So it was such like
I
a
say this.
shock
No, city
to her.
boys and males don't. Men do. Men reject women all the time because it's called de-discipline, and we know that all you're going to give is bad sex and stress. So what are we talking about here?
Yeah, like she just couldn't understand it. And I told her, I was like, do you remember what I told you when we broke up? She's like, no, I put it out. I was like, I told you that after we break up, this is what's going to happen. Because your marriage failed before me, because he cheated
Mm,
with whatever, you're not going to be able to get another guy that is going to be successful, that's going to want you for more than that, because you're still in the state of mind to think that when things are low or when things are down, you can just offer that. I was like, going forward, you're only going to have that type of guy around you, and you're going to have one, you're going to start to be frustrated, and you're going to do what a lot of women do in that situation. You're going to say that I'm not going to date, I'm going to be celibate. Or two, you're going to find yourself, whatever that really means. And then you're going to come in contact with just toxic people, because instead of you actually dating these people, these men who are not really men, they're males, as you said, they're just going to hang
mhm,
around hoping something happens. And then you're going to remember the good times of when you were with actual men who are traditional or successful. And when you try to reach out to them like you did now, you're not going to find any success because they're going to have moved on because you've been outed. The mask has fallen off and people see you for
mhm,
what you really are.
mhm. No, that's definitely, unfortunately, what a lot of our women are dealing with right now, especially in the age group. They are starting to the term that I say, tongue in cheek, is they realize that they need to be making a different decision to get a different outcome. Well, it might be too late for you because you have had two or three shots at a husband, and one was too short, one didn't make enough money, and the other one didn't give you the sex that the city boy did. So now you're sitting there trying to Frankenstein a man, and then by the time you look up and your man, that Frankenstein man, don't exist, it's too late. Or, oh my God, what we're seeing now, we're seeing women in their late 30s and 40s have their first kid. You went your teens and 20s and early 30s without a kid, and now you just all of a sudden pregnant?
I couldn't believe when I started seeing that happening.
I mean, I don't, I go on Instagram for the business, but I'm in group chats and they'd be like, such and such is pregnant now. I was like, at 46 for the first time? By who? Some guy. Some guy? Not even like her man? No. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel bad because from what we remember, that ain't what she said she wanted. So, you don't want, ladies, you don't want to end up in that situation because that situation is actually really hard because now you got a person, you got 18 years with a male or a city boy who's now the father of your child, and you got to live on their terms. Because here's the funny thing about all this: what we see, and women in the chat, they need to drop this line. When they date a city boy or a male, they're more accommodating than a modern man or a traditional man, specifically a modern man. It's too much 50-50. It's too much negotiation. It's too much discussion. And what we often talk about as men, especially you're part of one of my men's group, is sometimes I just don't even want to have a discussion. It's not, I'm not mad. I just don't want to talk about everything all the time. It's already been decided. But in that situation with the city boy, okay, well, let's not talk about it. I don't want to stress you out. I want to do this. But when they get with that modern man or that tradition, they're just like, all right, let's have a discussion. I got to do that. And that's their trauma resurfacing on their previous relationship that they haven't dealt with. But I've always found it interesting that when it comes to those versions of a man, the male and the city boy specifically, all versions of a woman seem to be more accommodating to those two.
I wonder if that's because they look at them more so as their children, and then the mother instinct kicks in and they're nurturing instead of trying to be a partner.
Being a parent for a toddler is hard. Why would you be a parent for an old person?
That's a
That
question
makes
they
no
gotta,
sense.
yeah, that's a question I've yet to get a complete
I
answer to.
I wouldn't even sign up for a situation where I felt parental. I wouldn't want my daughter to sign up for something where she had to be parental. I wouldn't want my baby cousins, who I love to death, that are single, to sign up to be parental to a grown up who is supposed to be a man. That makes no sense to me, especially when you got all these stop pocket opportunities where if you just post the right pic and go to the right church service on a day, you'll come out with a date. So, what are you doing wasting your time with someone you believe is a child? I just don't get it. The sex can't be that good.
I don't think they see it, and I think many times these are because I've seen that where there's some of my female friends like they'll have male friends like that, and until someone sits them down and say, "Hey, this person is taking advantage of you," and you give them examples, they're like, "Oh, wow, you're right."
And you know what's unfortunate is they don't have that protection from dad or that relationship with dad in most instances to give him that, to give her that. Because dad is supposed to be the one, a big daddy. If their grandfathers did that for both of for all of our cousins or female cousins, and you're supposed to be able to sit them down and be like, "You're being stupid. This is not the type of guy for you. I need you to make better choices. If you make these choices, you're gonna end up pregnant in the trailer. You're gonna make these choices. You're gonna have 3 kids in Section 8. Is that the life you want for yourself? Well, no. Then I'm gonna need you to start making a better dating choice. I did not example this for you. You are disappointing me. Get out my face." Like, so then when women hear that, what actually gets activated is like an accountability button. It's like, oh, okay, so this is on me. I got to figure this out. They figure it out, and then they start getting better outcomes. But that's something that's from a societal standpoint and community standpoint we've missed. We've misaligned the accountability that comes from dad to daughter, the accountability that comes from dad to son, and we're unfortunately we got a bunch of adults out here trying to. That's where the term adulting came in. It's just like I'm adulting. What do you mean? Well, I gotta make decisions. I gotta do insurance, and I gotta pay this, and I gotta fix that. Yeah, that's all the stuff that my grandfather and father told me I was gonna have to do. What's the problem? I don't want to do all this. Oh,
It's
I
scary,
see.
Glenn. It's scary out there to do all these things.
But you also know what it is. It's actually very rewarding when you succeed at it. See, there's the other side to this where we talk about long-term relationship, marriage, children, legacy as a result. When you start to see your legacy forming before your very eyes, when you start to get good outcomes with one woman, when you start to get good outcomes with your children, it feels better than holding on to the fear of it's never going to be good. Is she going to cheat on me? Is she going to be loyal? Like I don't even know what that means. She going to be loyal? Yeah, yeah. If you got a vision and you operate in the vision, if she ain't loyal, the market gonna say she's stupid. Girl, you better go back to that man. That man is moving things forward. I don't know. I don't like the way that he talked to me. Get over yourself. That's actually when women are accountable to other women. Is when they start making egregious mistakes. It's just like, girl. So I don't know.
So as we close, Glenn, what final words do you want to share with our audience today, my friend?
Stay single because y'all too selfish to be in a relationship.
I'm going to rebuke that.
Stay single. No, I mean the final words are like this. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and spend time in front of your audience. But it's like, guys, you can do the work. If you're someone that's struggling, the best advice I can give is to find a mentor. Ladies, find a female mentor. Men, find a male that's a mentor that's at the stage you want to be. Men and women at that stage want to give good advice because if they're moving in the way that we talk about with TMG, we say that they're looking and ready to get back to the next generation. And all they're waiting for are for people to raise their hand and say, "Hey, I need a little help." And when you're following their advice and getting the result, people are really there to cheer you on. So